The subject of AI itself is sometimes become widely open, and they think too much to do.
They were highlighting that enterprise ChatGPT is up 8x, custom GPTs are up 19x. So, this is going from experiments to everyday workflow. Actually, their data is saying that workers are now saving 40 to 60 minutes a day, and 75% are now doing tasks they couldn't do before.
The Maven course that I and a colleague of mine, Shen, we are doing soon. The idea is basically to evangelize about this subject, but also give very practical career-oriented tips. If employees feel that they're going to be left behind and they are stuck in a legacy world, this is their way out.
Welcome to No Effing Idea, the podcast where two battle-tested insiders cut through the noise about enterprise AI. Some straight talk about what AI really means for organizations trying to transform, both from strategy and technology angles. David Royal is the founder of Tanhill.ai, an AI strategy and deployment firm for mid-sized and specialist firms. And prior to that, led many enterprises transform at EY, Capgemini, and Grant Thornton. And Srini Annamaraju co-founded IntelStack, an AI and cloud services firm, and before that, led strategic growth at Capgemini, TCS, and HPE. He also writes the High Stakes Tech Leader newsletter for enterprise leaders. Please welcome your hosts, David and Srini.
Hello everyone to a cold and blustery afternoon in the UK, episode number 7 of No Effing Idea, the messy middle of enterprise AI. Hi Srini, how are you?
Very well, David. Very well. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday, indeed. Build up to Christmas, so very excited.
Yes, how many days to go? 16 more days only. Yes,
Brilliant.
And it's all going to get hopefully white and little more merciful in terms of cold. We all want a very sunny but cold, but snow as well. Yeah, it's interesting times.
Indeed. So, Srini, today we're going to talk about evals, which I know is a topic close to your heart, and you are going to be in the hot seat. However, in advance of that, keen to get the latest AI news. Was there anything that particularly appealed to you in the papers today or this week?
Yeah, well, isn't there a torrent of things happening all the time? And you see a whole bunch of developments, events. AWS did their reInvent last week, and a constant stream of news. So maybe, one thing that stuck with me across, if I look at the news stream and what are the common themes or threads going through them, one thing is for sure, what I'm seeing is a conscious effort from the vendors. If you look at it from the hyperscalers to the smaller so-called SaaS companies to services vendors, everyone is trying to make their AI offerings, their cloud offerings, enterprise specific, enterprise context specific. You introduced the podcast by saying it's a messy middle. So everyone is trying to make it, the enterprise friendly nature of the models. And I think slowly we are forgetting the days of benchmarks and model lab level benchmarks only for evals. It's now becoming a lot more enterprise centric. So you look at Nova Forge of AWS, how do they improve the AI models for enterprise tasks? That's what they're coming out with. Then I see similar thing as a company called AlphaSense, which has won some awards. Again, how do they integrate GenAI into critical workflows? Those are some of those 2 or 3 that I picked up, which are quite interesting in terms of how everyone is focused on making their offerings a lot more enterprise sensitive. And all that goes towards adoption improvement. Any you picked up, David?
Well, obviously there was the dropping of the OpenAI Enterprise AI report, which is always a good read. It's becoming an established report these days, isn't it? But the key headlines for me is that usage isn't just growing, it's exploding, which we're all seeing ourselves, but they're obviously able to actually analyze all the queries and questions that their tool is being asked. But they were highlighting that enterprise ChatGPT is up 8x, custom GPTs are up 19x. So, this is going from experiments to everyday workflows. So that's pretty exciting. productivity gains. We hear in all the headlines.
Yeah.
Actually, their data is saying that workers are now saving 40 to 60 minutes a day, and 75% are now doing tasks they couldn't do before, mainly coding, analysis, automation. So that's all very exciting. But I think what's probably a little bit scarier is the fact that the gap between the leaders and everyone else is, as you could have predicted, is widening really quickly. And that they're saying sort of frontier firms are now 2 to 7 times more deeply embedded with AI than the median company, the early stage ones. And they've got standardized workflows, internal tools, and that advantage is going to keep on compounding. So it's obviously continues to be an extraordinary space and growing enormously fast. And from our own work, we're seeing more and more normal businesses, as it were, engaging in the AI journey. This is mainstream. Everyone's doing it.
Yeah, no, you're right. The progress that OpenAI has made, the gap also has reduced. Their code red is now famous for everyone's quoting them. But it's good. I mean, they're not embarrassed about that. They have openly shared that they are worried about it. They're doing something about it. The funny thing that I observed a couple of days back when I was creating both Gemini Pro 3 and OpenAI 5.1. The same question asked to both.
Okay.
5.1 was giving me kind of flattered kind of reply. Pro 3 actually replied back with a lot more disagreeing kind of tone. So I think the engagement dynamics in both the platforms is very interesting. One is trying to engage you by challenging you.
Yep.
The other is trying to engage by going along with you. And when I challenged 5.1 with that, this is what I think you're missing. It fell in line. It started agreeing with me there.
Agreeing with you again. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think code red has to also mean how they would actually not do that just to keep people engaged by saying yes.
Indeed. I saw a nice hack the other day to address that sycophantic aspect of OpenAI in particular, is actually asking it to critique your idea, your report as somebody else's work rather than your own. And then it goes in all guns blazing and is actually very critical if it thinks that you want a criticism of it rather than actually an appraisal of your own idea, which I thought was very interesting and quite a useful way of actually challenging yourself in terms of what you're coming up with.
Yeah, I think the aspect that's happening is the confusion between the identities of the machine, which is, let's say, Gemini Pro 3 or ChatGPT, and you as an individual. How are you? It's kind of blurring into each other, bleeding into each other, because it gives me an idea, I absorb it, I develop it, I give it back, it starts giving me the credit for that, and then the to and fro actually confuses both sides. And the more it becomes a kind of sounding board and takes that role very clearly, I think the system prompts that they must be giving should help with that. But hey, it's early days and you never know how this is going to change.
I had a interesting experience a couple of weeks ago, and I had a tricky client situation and some training hadn't gone as well as we'd intended.
Right.
And so I asked OpenAI to critique the situation and work out best action, how to deal with it. And it didn't pull its punches. I mean, it was very absolute in terms of what could have been done better, best way forward, my own failings in there. So I think it is actually shifting already. It's an interesting dynamic, which then becomes really significant when you start thinking about the role that AI can take in the organizational construct, and actually how it can shift from being the assistant to the manager, or actually start providing that quality assurance oversight role. If it is properly able to critique, criticize, and actually suggest how to tailor your activity, that changes that relationship quite significantly.
No, I think that's important. You did mention it in your post as well. The feedback, if the prompt is right, the feedback that comes back is always of high quality. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So it's something to use, and I often do this pass the ball kind of a thing where I get a feedback from one LLM, I pass it on to another and say, does that make sense? And then there's a bit of LLM as judge. kind of dynamic that happens between the LLMs. And of course, you need to have all the time in the world to do that. But it's fairly high quality. Yeah,
indeed. So what other news have you heard?
There's this thing. Was it yesterday that we heard IBM acquiring a company called Confluent, and sizable investment? I think sizable acquisition, $11 billion. And what Confluent did, I think they are about 10 years old, if I'm not wrong, and they use Kafka, which is a technology to stream real-time data. And one thing that's becoming very, very key in AI, especially enterprise AI, is the data aspect. And in the Confluent world, from what I gathered with some little research, is the whole lot of sensors and a lot of data generation, data production is happening, and there's a lot of data consumption, therefore, will need to happen. And so with, I think the point that's coming out is IBM is wanting to acquire these kind of companies so that they can do real-time AI analysis inside an enterprise. So, for example, if Walmart has a shelf becoming empty, the feedback goes back to the manager to refill immediately rather than wait until next day, or at least do an indent for new inventory coming in from the warehouse, even if it takes, let's say, 1 day for it to come. The gap between the decision and the action, that is coming down with these kind of tools. And it only makes sense because now with AI becoming multimodal, you need vision, you need audio, you need text, you need all sorts of information inputs to come in. So that's one thing I found quite interesting.
Yeah, no, indeed. You also mentioned UiPath as well, which was evolved from the automation world, but seems to be going great guns.
Yes, and this is the parallel I draw is I have an electric hybrid car with me, and then now I've ended up buying a BYD as well, which is fully electric.
Okay,
and UiPath story seems to be very similar in the sense that they started from the RPA rule-based engine kind of world, and they're marrying the AI world in a very nice way. By, for example, I think they have a tie-up with OpenAI for their connectors. And so the kind of hybrid automation that UiPath is championing is probably, for all you know, it could be a big winner. Because when people are afraid of going and buying fully electric cars, the plug-in hybrids have become quite popular, right? So that has taken off. So I think some of that parallels between these two industries is something I'm seeing. And 20% ARR growth, still small numbers in terms of numbers, a single digit billion revenues. But no, they are not going out of business, as a lot of people thought that,
right.
What are they going to do now?
I remember 10 years ago when RPA was a big deal and moving incredibly fast, and you had automation anywhere, UiPath and others all having fantastic outcomes. Did they take a downturn and then have now become AI enabled and now come out the other side? Is that what's happening, do you think?
I don't think they really fell down too much, but I think the share prices go up and down all the time anyway. But if you don't include that, the revenue lines will not change much, is my guess. I will check after the call. But my sense is if a customer has signed up to X number of bots from UiPath, then they are doing that work. I don't think they will come down as such. The annuity nature of that business is not going to come down.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Okay. Well, probably enough of our news updates. It's now time for you to get your grilling.
Yeah. I'm all for it. Yeah, this is a subject which I found fascinating because, this is the weakest link, I would think, in terms of AI adoption, David. And therefore, I welcome all and any questions from you today.
Well, let's start with the obvious one. What are evals? What do you understand by them, and what is their role?
I think evals have gained prominence. Evals are basically a short form of evaluations, and this has become prominent because harking back to the way the LLM responses that come to us have been evaluated by somebody else. for the accuracy, for the citations, groundedness, whether that has actually happened, whether it's hallucinating or not. Those are the elements of eval. So in a model level, when you ask a question, you get an answer back. That is the eval that the model provider has done with the likes of Surge or Turing or, I don't know, Scale. A lot of companies have come up and they have evaluated those responses with either domain experts or with technical experts, and they've come to a level. But when these come into the enterprise, those enterprises will need evals done in their context, because two companies in the same industry, two banks in the same industry, will probably want different levels of eval that is tuned to their context. So evals, what are they? They are basically an assessment of whether AI is doing the job that you intended it to do, to put it mildly.
So tell me, why is this different to your traditional testing and quality assurance procedures? What are evals over and above things that we've always done with software and technology?
Yeah, I think two reasons. One is it's very dynamic. The field is very dynamic. Even if nothing happens, you've taken a model from, let's say, OpenAI today and using that along with another model from another provider together. One of them changes the model, upgrades it. Surprise, surprise, you might feel the responses should be better than what it was yesterday, but the model upgrade actually can downgrade your responses. So that's one, right? The input or the supply chain for AI inside enterprise, if it upgrades, it can actually lead to a problem at your end. Number two is a well-known reason that AI is very stochastic or non-deterministic, and therefore, when you do 2 + 2, you expect a 4 answer in a deterministic world, in the earlier traditional world. But in the world now, you've got to have the ability to catch the probability of the right answer being very high. So you got to eval that. And therefore, the dynamic nature as well as the non-deterministic nature make it, mandatory is a easy word, is a must. Evals are a must to do that. Else, you don't know what you're getting into.
So forgive me, Srini, but you're still talking very technical language. Why is this now a senior executive issue? Why has it been elevated up the organization?
Well, the boards will be accountable for whether the organization is risk mitigated or not. So, for example, if there are 4 P&L lines, then if AI is being used in all 4 of them, when the organization is mature, then because of the non-deterministic nature, let's say one P&L has a customer service function, it gives a response that actually creates liability for the board, for the company, for penalties or for whatever legal action that somebody takes on the organization, because the LLM or the AI said something else. The board cannot absolve itself of saying, no, that is not our responsibility. That is actually OpenAI's responsibility. They can't. So I think boards, therefore, have picked up a lot of responsibility in addition to what they had for oversight. And evals are their way out to be able to do this in terms of audit, as well as in terms of pre-facto or post-facto, both ways.
So in the world of consultancy and service provision, there's clearly benefit for a exaggeration of the risks associated with these things. And do you think that this is an example of where the AI risk has been exaggerated to sell governance tools, or are you seeing real financial implications and compliance failures happening today?
Well, I think to some extent that is true. If you look at cybersecurity, for example, is the nearest parallel that we can think of for AI evals. Some cybersecurity vendors actually say, if you don't do this, you are into a problem. What happens? ... right? Similarly, the insurance providers from the core business domains, that is the usual refrain of selling their offerings and products. But in evals, I would say the Wild West is still prominent in terms of they not pushing it as much as they should, mainly because the field of AI evals is not very old. When I say that, of course, AI is not 3 years old or 4 years old. It has been talked about for the last 60, 70 years, back to Turing days. But the enterprise side of AI deployment is relatively definitely new. Not the classic AI ML, but the generative side. And therefore, vendors are probably keen to push AI irrespective of evals. In fact, I would say they rather get AI of their AI in and then worry about evals later. So that's one group of vendors. The other group that actually sell eval products are definitely overselling it, right? And some of the methodologies that they recommend are definitely not to be taken as they are suggested. For example, I'm getting technical here, but if you do not do error analysis of your chats that your AI agent is doing with your customers, if you do not humanly analyze them, then if you just depend on eval tools as they would expect you to, right? They want to charge you by the usage. Then you are into a problem. So don't go blindly into it. There is a bit of hype from the vendors, but there is also less hype from the core vendors that want their AI to be used and not held back by enterprises.
I remember you describing evals as a connective tissue between value, risk, and operations. Could you unpack that a little bit for me? And why is it so often missing from those AI discussions?
Yeah, if you look at value that you want to get out of a particular use case, the value could be immediately traced back to 3 or 4 things. Could be revenue uplift, could be cost reduction, could be risk mitigation, could be, speed to market, things like that. But the via media for doing this is through operations. And when you do this, you have been doing this with a largely deterministic tool set so far. And now with you bringing these AI tools into the picture, you have to make sure that the link between the value side and the operation side is in such a way that the risk is mitigated. And the risk mitigation happens through what I call proactive evals, right? So you cannot do a post facto, oh, this went wrong and therefore let's do a post-mortem of it. That kind of eval is also required, but usually the horses fled the stables by then. So how do you do this in a proactive manner is the kind of connecting tissue I talk about. And that is very critical. Otherwise, you're forever lagging behind.
Thank you for that. So help me with what actually good evaluation looks like in a customer journey. And what are the signals that something is going wrong? Can you sort of bring that to life for us in terms of how this should work and how it should highlight the problems?
I think one of the things that I definitely feel that enterprises need to look at the eval subject in a much more organized way than what it is being done now. And one way of doing that, David, is through clear definition of the 4 roles that I feel enterprises are missing in this.
This is our Echo, Delta, Sigma, Omega roles, is that right?
Yes. And fancy as they sound, I took a little bit of inspiration from what Palantir does with some of these roles, the forward deployed this and forward deployed that kind of designation. And, as I did my research and tried to put some homework into place, the question that you asked, how do enterprises actually define whether evals are going right or wrong, et cetera, boils down to humans that are there in the organization. You cannot ask AI to trust AI. Well, that's coming as well, LLM as judge, etc. But you need to start with humans. And there are 4 grades, 4 lanes, as I say. There's no hierarchy in these 4 roles. One is, of course, how do you define the trust contract? When you're saying that you want to sell something to a customer, there's a trust contract there. And who writes that? What does good look like? That is the role that I say ECO has to have. The kind of erstwhile business analyst that we used to have in IT projects or consulting projects. So that's the ECO, which is the kind of forward deployed eval strategist, if you will, right? So that's the kind of first role. The second is Eco comes in and defines the trust contract, but if you do not test that through a set of eval tests, which is what I think a more software engineer type person does, which is a delta, that person writes it. Now remember that all this is happening, these two roles have gone to work, and yet the AI process has not gone on stream yet. Now the AI process goes on stream and the chatbot actually is serving real customers. There is a role that needs to also look at runtime accuracy, hallucinations, drift, bias, whether all that is happening on runtime. And that's the role I feel is that of a role called Sigma. These three guys do this work, but the fourth guy or girl who really have to present it back to the senior execs. Your first or second question was around why should boards care? And boards will not understand the Delta Sigma language. So somebody has to be there who can actually convert all of this, tech language into something that they understand in terms of their parameters, risk, revenue, penalties, GDPR guidelines, EU AI Act. What does it mean with this? So the Omega is that kind of a guy or person who can actually convert this into dollar-pound terms, risk terms, etc., so that it comes to life for the board or for the senior execs or leadership board, or that's the kind of way of really ensuring that this pod of four people are singing from the same hymn sheet, as it were, for you to know that my eval process at least has the right operating model, your word, right?
It feels a little bit like the 3 lines of defense model we're used to in a risk context.
Correct. Indeed. Yeah. This I would say is a kind of matrix structure which plays into that, and together this pod actually serves all the 3 lines of defense.
Different hats on, different perspectives, but in combination is effective. Okay, talk to me about maturity levels, and what is sort of the entry level, and how do firms progress through that with their evaluation methodology?
Well, I think there are 2 ways of looking at it. One question that I get sometimes from smaller organizations is, you're describing a very, fully functioning, all song and dance kind of a system with 4 people, and, we don't have that kind of luxury. We don't want to have that. So the answer to that is always that you don't have to have all 4 roles or hats functioning all the time, even if you're a large organization. If you define a bounded scope for a particular AI project, so long as you're using ecos and omegas with the same person, that is also fine, because together ecos and omegas, as we defined, are kind of similar in terms of what their remit is. Deltas and sigmas tend to be more technical in nature. So maybe you can fuse those 2 into one hat, the other 2 into one hat, and therefore you can get that going in that manner. So a small organization, a pod could be just one person doing all 4 roles. In a larger organization, you could start with a smaller, very scoped kind of a project boundary, and then do that. And eventually, as you develop this, you will begin to see the value coming out of this pod, and it more than pays for itself. I've seen that in action.
And going back to our conversation earlier around how AI can become more of a managerial review capability, as well as actually the original analytic capability. Do you, and also sort of the evolution of agentic hierarchies and operating models, how do you see evals working alongside checker agents or validation agents and the like that we're seeing sort of evolving in the thoughts around agentic?
I think, today we might start with 4 roles as we defined here, ecos, deltas, and so on. I think with the accuracy levels of agentic systems that we are seeing reported from academic papers or, enterprise level research, the chances that you might have a delta agent, AI agent, doing some of the more deterministic kind of work, writing eval harnesses, for example, right? It took me, I just wrote a scenarios and rubric sheet for a client of ours, and it took me 40 minutes to write that. And Actually, more than that, but let's say 2 hours. And the same thing, once the process stabilizes, it can be done in 30 minutes by a human. And an agent with the past data that it has access to can write the whole thing in a minute. So I think there will be a progression to what you say, from human equals and deltas and sigmas to eventually having 4 delta agents and 15 sigma agents. And that will happen. And then humans will actually, steer all these agents with a very few humans at these levels, but, more and more agents coming in. That world is not far.
And what's always hard with this sort of quality assurance audit type principles is it's all additional cost to the AI process and workflow. How do you envisage sort of being able to demonstrate value? I mean, I've been given those tasks before, writing the business case for a risk solution. And it's really hard because you're avoiding a disaster. It's hard to monetize and quantify to justify the spend.
Yeah. Well, I'd say, I'll say two parts to this argument. One is, what if you don't do? Are you okay for the flip side of not doing this, right? And that's itself is a scary question. And the second is, evals are part of the cost structure yourself. I mean, it's a line item. You got to think of that as a line item. And it is not necessary that all of these 4 rows that we talked about are all likely to be net new roles or net new payroll costs. May or may not be, right? And so the way I call them is they're hacks, not roles, not headcounts on them, right? So rethink that, and then all this talk about humans losing jobs and things like that. If you've got that kind of capability inside your organization, why don't you rethink about redesignating some of these guys with such a deep knowledge of the domain, the own enterprise context, the culture, all of that, and then embed that into these 4 roles, and you will be so much better off, actually. So value will way exceed the cost, I would think.
I think there's a nice link you make there with sort of future roles, because this does feel like a real growth area, doesn't it? And more people might become eval controllers, a bit like financial controllers today.
Yes.
Professional career.
Yeah. And I have to state this. I've read somewhere recently that 4 large organizations, and I've been doing research. I'm thinking, okay, tell me, is this all a theory, this whole eval thing, or is it really some organizations really spearheading this in a big way? And are there any role model organizations? So apparently, probably some of these companies will come as a surprise to you. AstraZeneca, a big user of evals in its structure. JPMC, for example, right? LLM Suite, a lot of publicity around what they are doing within AI. They're big users of AI evals. Then I see our humble toothpaste maker, Colgate, also a good user of that. Shell. I mean, we've had 1 or 2 interactions with Shell ourselves. A lot of work, billions saved is the word that they use with AI. Not sure of billions, but in terms of their use of AI evals, it's very positive that these big organizations are actually beginning to see. So what is the proof of the pudding? I would think the fact that you're not hearing disaster stories coming out of these kind of companies is a kind of sign that evals seem to be working. Yeah.
And you and I both spend a lot of time in the SME sector. Are you seeing evals becoming established in that segment as well?
Unfortunately not. The subject of AI itself is sometimes become widely open, and they think too much to do already, and then this AI is there. Evals is not something that has come in that sense in a big way, and I guess they look to the larger companies to do that. I think the way it will percolate, perhaps, David, is when they are suppliers to a larger organization that's implementing AI. Let's say they are an ancillary supplier to JLR, for example, and JLR implements an AI and it percolates down, then the downstream effects will be something that the SME has to look at. Or if it is initiating an AI initiative, then they'll have to show proof that it has been evaluated by JLR to JLR, right? So I think that kind of dynamic is what will force through ecosystem changes.
Well, very good, Srini. As ever, you've managed to survive the grilling with aplomb. And given I didn't give you any of those questions in advance to prep, well done you. That's very good.
That's kind of you. Thank you.
So thank you, Srini, for that. That's wonderful insight. And clearly this evals marketplace is going to grow and grow as AI grows. It's a necessary yin and yang of the benefits, isn't it? To make sure we have the discipline to support it.
Yeah, the yin and yang is right. In fact, we're let me make a little plug for the Maven course that I and a colleague of mine, Shen, we are doing soon. The idea is basically to evangelize about this subject, but also give very practical career-oriented tips. I see a massive opportunity in front of the enterprises and therefore the employees. And if employees feel that they're going to be left behind and they are stuck in a legacy world, this is their way out. And we're going to lay out over 4 sessions how this is actually a big opportunity for individuals who are in the middle level, especially, how they can actually get ahead. And therefore, it's a win-win for both sides, the enterprises as well as the stuck employees in the middle.
That sounds fantastic, Sri. How do people get access to that course? Will it be in the notes of the podcast?
We will put something in the show notes, and we will also, I'll also put out a post in LinkedIn, and if they follow me or, look out for this, I'll beat the drum quite a bit. So I'll have enough information going out of LinkedIn, etc. So look forward to having a lot of the people signing up for the cohorts.
I'm sure you will. Well, thank you very much, Srini. So until next time, thank you very much indeed for your insights on evals. I'll just leave a little anecdote that I was reading a friend's post on LinkedIn of the podcast they listened to, and they very kindly referenced our podcast and talked about the nature of it, and in contrast to the perhaps more enthusiastic American equivalents out there. But one thing she did highlight was that one of the hosts tends to say the word indeed too often. And I heard myself saying it all the way through that. So I do apologize. I'm going to try and stop saying indeed quite so much.
Either that or I start saying indeed and we balance it out.
Or maybe we'll rebrand indeed the new Everything Forecast.
Oh, yes, that will be nice.
Very good. Well, thanks, Judy. Until next time.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks. Bye-bye.